Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus Show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. A Chinese AI company, DeepSeek, has just rolled out an LLM tool, R1, that's taken the world by storm. This tool has wiped out over $1.5 trillion of market cap of the Western tech giants. This is being called the USA's Sputnik moment, the time during the Cold War when the Soviet Union launched the world's first satellite. But today on the News9 Plus show, we're asking if this is India's Galwan moment when it comes to technology. Is this our wake-up call? And where is India's own DeepSeek AI LLM? Joining me to answer this is senior BJP leader and former Union Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology, Rajiv Chandrasekhar. You know, there's this viral video that's doing the rounds on social media of Sam Altman in India in 2023 and an Indian VC asking him if he could create an LLM in $10 million. And Altman just brushes it off, saying that absolutely not. And just over a year later, China has done that. Claims to have launched a LLM in $10 million. How did China beat Altman?
Look, I think when Sam was in town, I was asked the same question by a news channel, I don't recall it which one, and I said one of the big mistakes in tech and the history of tech is to start believing your own Kool-Aid of invincibility, and that lasts till the next disruptor and the next bright mind comes and disrupts the status quo on the assumptions, and that's precisely what has happened. I think a couple of these American companies had begun to believe that access to capital, scaling up through huge investments in AI compute infrastructure was the only way to build AI and move to AGI and ASI, artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. And it took a young group of innovators who've engineered incredibly powerful algorithms, used high quality data and trained their models very, very creatively to demonstrate that finally it is not just about capital expenditure or the dollars that you throw at the problem. It is also about the brain power and innovation that you apply to it. And this is played out, by the way, in the history of technology repeatedly, that you have people disappointed by the disruptors.
People disappointed by the disruptors, but you fully expected it, because just last week you told me, just before Trump was sworn in, that how China had embarked on a course to dominate and control technology, and the US had only woken up now. There's a full-on tech war between the US and China. But the question is that when will India get its own DeepSeek?
Look, part of the problem in India also has been that there have been very powerful people in the technology ecosystem in this country who have for many, many months pushed forward this thesis that India should not build large language models because it's too expensive, and that we should only focus on applications. And you know, we have constantly been arguing, at least some of us have been, and I've written about this extensively in newspapers as well, that there is an opportunity because the history of technology shows that the price of compute always comes down, and there are always going to be more and more innovative ways to use compute infrastructure. That is what the history of compute does. So I am very confident, Sandeep, that in our country there is already a large talent pool of AI practitioners. There are startups that are already in the AI space. And when the government of India's India AI policy and vision starts getting rolled out, especially with GPU capacities being built in the country, that we will be in this battlefield that is currently being duked out between the Americans and the Chinese. I think this is early days, and I'm extremely confident that in the coming months, if not years, if not months, that we will have Indian startups also demonstrating how they want to upend and disrupt the AI, the progress that AI is making. So we are not there yet, but like I said, this is broadly early days for the entire world, and I'm confident, I'm very bullish. So if I was a betting man, I'd bet on India being there in this battlefield pretty soon.
Absolutely. In fact, that one point that you made about India Inc. not investing in creating LLMs and being happy with applications. You know, you're an engineer yourself, a computer engineer. You've been an entrepreneur at the forefront of ICT before you were a minister. Does it concern you that India Inc. isn't investing enough in R&D? Our investments in R&D are among the lowest in the world, less than 1%. Forget, creating LLMs. We're not even creating the very basic infrastructure that's required for these kind of LLMs.
Look, Sandeep, there are, for India today as a country and for youngsters in India, technology means two types of opportunities. One is the traditional IT, ITES, where we've built these, beautiful big companies, Wipro, Infosys, TCS. They are essentially doing software development, software engineering work in the IT, ITES space. The real opportunities in the coming years are in deep tech, in artificial intelligence, in semiconductors, in quantum computing, in the electronic systems for the future, next generation compute. Now, these are areas in which none of these Indian large giants have really had any meaningful footprint, presence, or indeed interest or inclination. And so you've seen the last wave of startups came from first generation entrepreneurs in the internet and D2C space. And so I am banking on not the big Indian companies doing very much about AI, original AI work or original semiconductor work, but it will be this next wave. I've called it the next wave, the second wave of Indian youngsters and Indian startups that will propel India into this deep tech space. There is no need for us to be disappointed that India Inc. is not in this, because they are dealing with a totally different part of the technology ecosystem, which is information technology and information technology enabled services, which is a very different business. Different types of skill sets and talents are required. You need volumes of people, volumes of headcount and engineers. But in deep tech, where real innovation, real intellectual property, real products, real devices, real platforms are being built that are cutting edge, you need a very different temperament, really different types of skills and talent. The DeepSeek example is the real wake-up call about how a group of young quant mathematics nerds have cracked the AI problems. So it tells you it's not just about software programming and coding, it's also about having deep knowledge about mathematics, physics, and quantitative mathematics and physics. So it's a different game, Sandeep.
Yes.
And so there's no reason to be either disappointed or not about the India Inc.
Right.
It'll be a totally new generation of young Indians that are going to champion this and lead this.
Absolutely. Bet on India, as you said. But, a few days back, we saw Donald Trump, standing with those three CEOs, some of the topmost tech guys in the United States, and promising something like $500 billion for investing in AI and Stargate. We don't see anything from the government of India. What is it that the government should really do in all of this to enable this kind of a startup ecosystem for deep tech, as you just said?
Look, I will respectfully disagree, Sandeep. I think in 2015, way before Donald Trump recognized the opportunity of tech, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji recognized that tech is not just a transformational tool for governance, but also a huge way to expand our economy and create an innovation ecosystem in our country. And today, from 4.5% of GDP that digital economy was in pre-2014, we are at almost 14% today. And we will be a fifth. The digital and innovation economy will be 1/5, that is 20% of the GDP by 2026, 27. So there is, I actually would like to humbly submit that actually countries like the US are following the lead that India has taken in doubling down and getting fully invested in the digital economy and innovation as the way to progress and create opportunities for our youngsters and to grow our economy. So we've shown the way to the world. Yes, in the area of AI, we are behind India, US and China, but I wouldn't bet on us staying there for too long. I think our young Indians and young practitioners are going to keep plant the India flag in the AI battlefield fairly soon, very rapidly.
Yes, Indian entrepreneurs planting the flag on the AI battlefield very shortly. But Mr. Chandrasekhar, there have been a lot of concerns with Chinese technology platforms. TikTok, for instance, is just a social media platform. There seems to be a trust deficit when it comes to China and tech. And of course, this has been flagged in the case of DeepSeek as well. Do you see a opportunity here for India to kind of step in? Because I'm sure we don't have the same kind of trust deficit that China faces.
No, the trust deficit that China faces is completely deserved. They've earned it with a lot of hard work. They brought it upon themselves by data harvesting without consent for many years and building profiles of citizens from across the world. India, of course, is a very different country. We have legal safeguards, we have rule of law, we have a data protection bill that prevents anybody, including the government, from collecting and harvesting and misusing data of users in India or indeed abroad. So in a world where the word trusted platform has gained momentum for telecom equipment, the underlying plumbing of the internet, I think safe and trusted platforms in AI will also become the norm as we go forward. Our Prime Minister has already made that case that trusted systems is the only thing that we will allow on the Indian internet, and that has been echoed by many countries including UK and US, where they have essentially ripped out untrusted vendors from their telecom and internet networks. So I think when we talk about AI in the future, we will talk about responsible and ethical use of AI, but responsible and ethical use of AI by ensuring that the platforms are trusted platforms. So I think that is something India has already spoken about, our Prime Minister has already spoken about as a requirement as we build the Indian innovation ecosystem. And I suspect that will get built into our AI systems, and therefore we can be different from the Chinese systems that are opaque and non-transparent as we join battle in the coming years.
Absolutely. India's advantage there when it comes to the AI battle. Mr. Chandrasekhar, in conclusion, I have to read what Sridhar Vembu of Zoho has just put out on social media. He's asked about why India doesn't have foundation models, and he says it's the same reason why India doesn't have Google or Facebook of its own. You need to be able to walk before you run. And this is a question I've asked you in the past as well, that a country that doesn't have its own social media platforms, how do you expect it to have its own foundation models when it comes to AI? How critical a gap is this?
Look, Sandeep, there is a long answer to this and there's a short answer. Obviously, I can't give you the long answer, but let me try the short answer. Look, the social media phenomenon that emerged in the 2005-2006 time frame is something that countries all around the world missed and did not regulate because they mistook it for innovation. And these platforms themselves played the part of being innovators and tried to escape regulation. But that is done, dusted, and it is a problem that we have all inherited, governments of the world have inherited. But with AI, the conversation is currently underway on what is really AI and what should be the guardrails around AI. There is a very dangerous statement made by Sam Altman 4 days ago that there needs to be a renegotiation of the social contract when it comes to AI, implying that people should be open to facing the risks and dangers and harms caused by AI systems because AI is justifying itself as going to solve the problems of tomorrow, and therefore all of this risk is acceptable. I think as these technologies upend our culture, change society, change the meaning of life, create different dynamics in our lives, there is a need for a discussion on what constitutes good AI, responsible and ethical AI, and that is a conversation I think democracies like India will lead. And our Prime Minister has already said that technology must be inclusive, technology should not be exclusive, and that technology must transform and help people's lives rather than create harm or exclusion to people. So I think our approach to tech is going to be very meaningful as the world debates the future of AI and what the guardrails of AI should be. I understand the Prime Minister is traveling to the France AI Summit.
Yes.
And I think our views will be amplified to the world that we want AI, but we want AI that is responsible and ethically used.
Absolutely. So that's Rajiv Chandrasekhar there on betting big on India and India planting the flag on the AI battlefield. Thank you very much for joining us and for your time, Rajiv Chandrasekhar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presents the Union Budget on Saturday. And today we're kicking off a three-part series on the middle class's expectations from the Union Budget. From automobiles, infrastructure, jobs and taxes. Today we are starting by talking about the modernization of India's automotive landscape. Cities are choked by pollution. Over 50% of air pollution in India's cities are caused by vehicle exhaust. India needs to accelerate the transition to clean mobility, not just for a cleaner environment, but also for public health. And today we are looking at the electric vehicles segment. Half a dozen new EV models are expected in the market this year. All the major automotive brands are in the fray, including Maruti, which plans to establish a robust EV ecosystem, including extensive charging infrastructure and service networks. All of these big players in EVs have urged Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to introduce reforms that enhance affordability, infrastructure and innovation in the sector to tackle both manufacturing and consumer-centric challenges. Will Budget 2025-26 change the EV landscape in India? Joining me on the News9 Plus Show now is Hormaz Soraji, Editor Autocar India, Dilip Chenoy, former Secretary General FICCI, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Karthik Malhotra. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Hormaz, I must start by asking you this. Incidentally, today is the 29th of January. It's the date Carl Benz patented the first gasoline-driven automobile.
Yeah, so in effect, internal combustion day, how ironic.
How ironic that we should be speaking about EVs on ICE day. But let me start by asking you this, Hormaz. We're going to see like a dozen EVs being launched this year. How do you evaluate what's on offer? And has India joined this EV game very late?
So I think, we were a low base really, but we saw some good growth last year. And I think, we've sold around 100,000, 1 lakh EVs. So penetration is still very low. It's just a little over 2%. I think that's really a function of a couple of things. One is what's turning out to be one hurdle is charging infrastructure or the lack of it. But I think a bigger, dampener to growth was the lack of choice and models. You had just one player dominant, Tata Motors, which really took a very strong lead, and they're still by far the market leaders with over 62% market share.
Right.
But I think 25 is going to be exciting because for the first time, you'll see a lot of mass brands coming into this space. So you've got Maruti, which is the biggest car maker in the country, and when they come with an EV, everyone has to sit up and take notice.
Right.
You've got the second largest brand coming in, which is Hyundai with the Creta EV, and you've got Mahindra also.
Yes.
So I think fundamentally these three, and then you've got others. You've got MG, a whole bunch of them coming in. So I think with this with this new wave of EVs, I think the penetration should at least double in 2025.
Right. Penetration should double. That's very impressive. Dilip Chenoy, while we're talking about ICE Day today, we can't ignore the Trump effect. The fact is that President Donald Trump has promised to make ICE great again. He's rolled back all the the ceilings that were the targets that were given for electric vehicles in the United States. He wants automobiles and oil. What are the kind of challenges that this could present for electric vehicles globally?
I think if you look at Trump's whole scenario, which he has talked about, there are two views on it. The first view is remove the cap.
Yes.
So he, they had a 50% cap on a particular year. Now he's removed the cap. He's saying if the consumer wants more electric vehicles, then the consumer can actually go that 50% cap can be breached. But I think the other aspect which is playing on the OE's mind is the CAFE standards.
Yes.
And to meet the CAFE standards and the way the CAFE standards, the corporate average fuel efficiency standards that the fleets have to meet, electric vehicles will play an important role in that. Alternate fuel vehicles will play an important role. Some will go the hybrid way, some will go the electric way, some will go any other way. So I don't think, government policy could be one, but the way the regulation is playing out on the ground is possibly going to continue the whole focus of electric vehicles, at least in major players. And the US is one market. Europe,
Right.
Japan, India, China, all are different markets. So those markets are not decelerating their approach to the EV space.
Yes, but the US is a very powerful player in all of this. I guess it funds a lot of the technology that goes into these markets. But Karthik, coming to the Indian market, as Hormaz mentioned, the fact that Maruti has finally jumped into the fray. It's the biggest player, and as he said, we'll have to set up and take notice of the kind of investments that they plan to roll out in the EV sector. Just give us an idea how significant this is, and does this mean that the consumer has much more now to choose from? This is a company that stayed away from EVs for the longest
You're
time.
right. In fact, I think Sandeep, hey, thanks for having me on the show. I think I'm sitting in August company. But in my view, it is a milestone and
Yes.
a fairly momentous milestone that now you have India's largest car manufacturer getting into the EV space. Thankfully, Maruti has been able to live up to its deadline, and it promised it's going to launch an EV in 2025.
Yes.
Here it is. It has revealed the EV Vitara. It has launched it at the
Yes.
Auto Expo that just concluded last week. But to my mind, this entire EV transition is primarily going to be led, and
Yes.
these are early trends that we are seeing already. The EV transition will be led primarily by the large buses. That is something which is happening, and that is where players like JBM, etc. are very active.
Yes.
Then there is the two-wheeler market, and with the likes of Ola Electric and the likes of Bajaj Auto now really doubling down on EVs.
Yes.
This is the second lever which is going to move to electrification of India's road transport.
Right.
Coming to cars, 100%, no doubt. Maruti, Suzuki coming in, Hyundai coming in with the Creta EV,
Yes.
so many models by MG, and now Mahindra and Mahindra jumping into the fray. Yes, the whole landscape has widened, and there is more choice available.
Right.
Interestingly, I think it's a good day to have this discussion because Maruti Suzuki's Q3 results just came out a few hours ago,
Right.
and you're seeing a 20% rise in utility vehicles. So the MUV, SUV segment has grown in volumes by about 20%, and Maruti Suzuki for Q3 has recorded a net profit of about 16% rise year on year at about 3,800 crore rupees or so.
Right.
So you know that the consumer is moving towards bigger vehicles, and these bigger vehicles, if they come at the price point with which, let's say, the Creta has been launched, which is fairly lucrative, if you're able to give the consumer that option between opting for an ICE engine where your petrol bills are likely to rise year on year,
Yes.
and an EV available at just a slight increase, not a great price difference. The delta needs to be really contained.
Yes.
I think consumers will willy-nilly opt for electric vehicles, and the big important but in that is that you've got to have much better charging infrastructure. Maruti is saying it's
Right.
going to give charging infrastructure at its dealerships, and it's going to launch, I think, 100 charging stations
Yes.
in the in a few states, etc. But these numbers are still small. So you need private investment going into
Yes.
building EV charging infrastructure, the kind that Tesla has done in the US. So
Right.
you really need either auto companies or other companies, battery manufacturers, etc., to go ahead and really double down on the EV charging infrastructure. And that is one hope that I have pinned on the budget, that if the government is really serious about
Yes.
the 30% consumer vehicles, passenger vehicles to be electric by the year 2030, then I think the post-sale, which is the charging infrastructure
Yeah.
or the battery swap, etc., these will have to be incentivized in the budget this year.
Have to be incentivized indeed. And this, 30 by 2030, Hormaz, that's a target that the government has rolled out. You believe we are in sight of achieving that? Just five years to go, and the numbers don't look very, the numbers for EV penetration in India don't look very encouraging. But do you believe these new incentives could kind of incentivize EVs?
Sorry about that. Yeah. So I think 2030. I think globally also, I think the level of EV penetration people were expecting, I think it's going to be a long transition.
Right.
I think we've seen the reasons for that. Fundamentally, it's charging infrastructure. Just until you have the same convenience of charging your vehicle like you do, or filling your vehicle, there will always be this sort of hurdle. But I think I think India is going to accelerate its EV penetration a lot in the next couple of years. I think 25 to 27, we are going to see a huge amount of EV products coming in, and I think it's largely because what was said earlier, that we have to meet CAFE standards. The CAFE standards in India are going to get even tougher by 27. By 28, I think I think by then 27, 28 is going to be the year that the new standard will kick in. It will force OEMs to go towards EVs, and I think that's one of the reasons why Mahindra, which is really got these big diesel engines, they know they have to offset that emission with the EVs. So I think EVs will accelerate, but I still think, my guess is I don't see penetration going more than 15 to 18% by 2030 still.
Yeah, just 15%, just half of that target. But even that, a double-digit thing is very impressive. But Dilip Chana, I want to ask you this about the center schemes, like FAME, PLI Auto, ACC. There's a whole alphabet soup of government-run schemes to promote electric vehicles in India. What more can the government really do to incentivize electric vehicles in India? Like the way, for instance, how China has done. The Chinese EVs today are leading the world. What can India learn from the Chinese example?
Yeah, so you talked about the alphabet soup that there is.
Yes.
The challenge is that it is very difficult, the ease of utilizing those subsidies, because of the complexity of the way that you have to align, and the data that you have to give, and the information that you have to give, and the recent challenge in the two-wheeler space. This has actually made a lot of companies wary of going in for these standards. Even if you look at the dispersion in the PLI scheme, it has been a challenge. So I think the first thing is, how can the government make the ease of compliance to all of these schemes better, faster, transparent before announcing any other scheme, right? The second is really, like Karthik mentioned, focus on the buses. Unfortunately, the buses have all gone in for fixed charging, and he, towards the end of his conversation, he mentioned battery swapping, right? So you can actually, with battery swapping, you can reduce or eliminate the incentive that is required in buses and trucks, etc., and get the last mile owner. People forget that the State Road Transport Corporation or the big fleet owners are not the largest owners of trucks and buses in the ecosystem. How do you make it viable for a single truck or a two truck or a two bus or three bus operator actually to transition into EV at the least possible cost and make a profit? So you'll have to actually look at that also, which is not there in the current scheme of things. So the consumer incentive is actually geared towards State Road Transport Corporations, large fleets, etc. What you might see, which will happen, and you started off the discussion on environment.
Yes.
If you go back to the history of CNG, once when multiple models were available, many cities and state governments actually said only CNG commercial vehicles will be allowed to ply. I don't know if that story is going to be repeated, but there's a high probability given from what we're hearing in Maharashtra and some of the states talking about. So I think make the incentives easy to comply with and obtain, and also look at extending them to specific areas and specific things rather than spreading it over the whole ecosystem. Focus it on specific cities and geographies linked to, let's say, pollution level or linked to consumption level, etc.
Absolutely, that's a great suggestion there. Linking it to specific cities, Karthik, Delhi and Mumbai, we've been seeing record levels of pollution. And this point that Dilip made about ease of compliance as well. What do you see in the union budget coming out, Karthik, this time? Is there something very specific that the government will bring out, given the fact that you literally have the Chinese EV makers breathing down our necks?
Right. So, Sandeep, I believe number one, like I mentioned already, charging infrastructure should be the top priority of the government from a budget perspective. See, unfortunately or fortunately, as a case maybe, with the introduction of GST, budget is not the moment to really arrive at kya kitna mehanga hua, kya kitna sasta hua, right? So GST has taken that joy of the budget away to some extent. That's why I said unfortunately. But I believe, already you have just a 5% GST on EVs.
Yeah.
Future GST Council meets could incentivize it, make it even sweeter, maybe bring it down to a special category of 2%, 3%, maybe waive it off altogether. You already have pretty much every state in which the government has advised those states not to charge the road tax. So you're trying to make it more conducive for
Yes.
people to buy the electric vehicle. But my biggest fear really is, and I'm not sure if the budget will be able to offset that or not. See, environmental concerns, pollution, all of that, tailpipe emissions, CAFE norms, all that is one
Yes.
part of the story. Primarily, the challenge that India is facing is a high import bill.
Yes.
So you want to actually reduce your oil imports and go for an
Right.
option where your oil imports don't pinch you as much,
Yes.
even if oil prices
world's
go
second
up
largest,
over. Right.
oil
But
importer,
what I'm
yes.
seeing play out right now in the market, especially with Trump coming in and Trump saying, drill,
Yes.
baby, drill, and I'm going to export oil and I'm
Yes.
going to put pressure on
Yes.
OPEC to cut oil prices. I have a feeling that over time, if EV penetration reaches globally an inflection point,
Yes.
that there's a huge volume of electric vehicles
The
being
oil
sold.
prices will crash.
No,
Yes.
I believe that the oil prices will actually come down,
Yes.
but China will be able to very comfortably raise the prices of the lithium-ion batteries.
Oh,
so
right.
your import bill will continue to be high. It's just that you're importing
It's-
something else. You're importing batteries from China,
Yes.
and that's a fillip for Chinese economy,
Right.
and you're not importing as much oil, even though oil is cheaper.
It's a conundrum.
So
indeed.
should the government actually look at import duties on oil, on petrol,
Yes.
which is outside of the GST?
Right.
And should there be some tinkering there to either incentivize or disincentivize ICE vehicles is something that perhaps Finance Minister could consider.
Absolutely, and we'll know in a few days from now. Thank you very much for joining us, Dilip Chenoy, Hormaz Sorabji, and of course my colleague Karthik Malhotra.
Thanks, Adit.
A new report from the Canadian government accuses India of killing Canadian Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India, of course, has denied these allegations and says Canada has created an environment for illegal migration and organized criminal activities. Joining me to discuss this new report that's out from Canada are Ambassador KP Fabian, Abhijit EV Vitara, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Aditya Rajkol. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Abhijit, you've read the report. What's your take on this? Is this everything that Trudeau promised it would be? The smoking gun?
I can tell you I have wasted a few hours of my life reading 123 pages of speculative dribble without one single concrete piece of evidence, not against China, not against India, not against anybody. If anything, if you remember the same October 2024 presser, which this lady claims the RCMP gave, they
Yes.
very clearly stated they are removing the Nijjar case from the foreign interference dossier.
Right.
Yet she spends a disproportionate amount of the report specifically reincorporating it into the foreign intelligence dossier.
Yes.
And every single place she says may. There is no is out here.
Yes.
Except at one point where, let me just read out the specific part out here. Indian activities primarily target the approximately 800,000 members of the Sikh diaspora in Canada and aim to promote a pro-India narrative. Goes on, with connections to agents of the government of India is consistent with the classified evidence.
Right.
Yet at no point of time does she say it indicates.
Right.
She simply says it may indicate the involvement of the government of India, and at several different places she goes on saying it is non-conclusive.
Right. Non-conclusive indeed. Yes.
Skips the sort of logical gymnastics required, the mental gymnastics required to go from no conclusive evidence and may to definitive statements like the one I read out. This lady has sat for 18 months on this report, and she is not able to give you anything even remotely conclusive. How does this make a whole load of sense? They insisted, the Liberal Party went on insisting that they would not declassify the report. And yet when this report comes out, this lady has seen all the so-called classified intel. It seems absolutely no different from credible allegations. In fact, she keeps quoting credible allegations throughout. There is no mention in the entire report of credible proof.
Right.
Which
Absolutely.
begs the question, where is the meat? You had the report and then you wanted to do a report on the report.
Right. So it's
And what is classified? What is classifiable out here?
absolutely. Aditya, it's January and we are talking of, as Abhijit said, May. And this May all through the report. You've read the report as well, and this credible allegations has made a comeback. Why is the Canadian government continuing down this path of putting out these credible allegations now? From statements, they've come into a report that's meant to talk about foreign interference in the Canadian elections is now turned into a credible allegations of India's involvement in Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing.
You know, Sandeep, the credible allegation stance that the Justin Trudeau government took from the very day that Justin Trudeau blamed India inside the House of Commons in Canada was always laughable. You know, there was not a shred of evidence, just as my friend Abhijit pointed out. Never ever in the public domain, in private conversations, in any kind of bilateral meetings, or even meetings between intelligence agencies, etc., was any kind of a dossier, any kind of an evidence, nothing shared at all. To the contrary, we have shared dossiers for which, you know, Canadian government has no stance. They don't want to speak about it. They don't want to respond why this was really done. And while you have been raising and questioning about the instance of Nijjar killing, let me remind to the viewer that there was another person who was killed during that entire time in Surrey. This person was Ripudaman Singh Malik, one of the suspects of the Air India bombing. Ripudaman Singh Malik, interestingly, was this person who few years ago wrote a letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi praising the BJP Modi government for the things that they have done for the Sikh community, and he wanted to come to India and perhaps settle here or meet family or have connections with India. Now the question is, there were two people who were arrested in the killing of Ripudaman Singh Malik. But till date, you know, yesterday was the day when the final verdict came in that. And the killer of Ripudaman Singh Malik has got life sentence in Canada.
And coincidentally, it's just today when the report was released.
Exactly. There were two gangsters who were involved, perhaps Canadian, but till now in their interrogation, they haven't revealed who were their masters. While
who
there
paid
are many,
them for this contract?
exactly. While there are many people across Canada who have said that this is gangland violence, there were Khalistani elements who were opposed to Ripudaman Singh Malik, perhaps Nijjar, who wanted to eliminate Ripudaman Singh Malik. But why hasn't the Canadian government come out and said openly who killed Ripudaman Singh Malik? There was no chatter. RCMP did no press conference. Nothing at all for why justice was denied to Ripudaman Singh Malik. And finally, you know, this chatter, this was a political stance taken by Justin Trudeau so that, you know, he could accumulate in some 12 or 13 areas the Sikh voters. But this has backfired. This is completely backfired to the level that he had to resign. I mean, he had to leave.
Vote bank politics. But he's still in charge. He's left, but he's still in charge.
He's still in charge till 24th of March. But the Liberal Party, you know, is coming out with names. They have other names, and they certainly do not want him to be the leader anymore.
Absolutely. And in fact, you know, Aditya, while you were speaking, I was just looking at one excerpt of the report which says that there were immediate rumors that Mr. Nijjar's death was somehow linked to the government of India, but that was not the initial read of Canada's intelligence and security agencies. The initial assessment was the killing was gang or criminal related, and the Prime Minister was informed of it. And then miraculously, it goes on to say that when South Asian members of Parliament and other members of the South Asian community were insistent the killing was connected to India, suddenly the connections start appearing. So this is bizarre, this kind of an investigation. And I think that's the reason why you have so many mays in the report.
You know, another thing to point out is that one would have expected that if this is a foreign interference committee, it will be a neutral committee. This was a committee set up by Justin Trudeau. He already knew what the report would be. He perhaps was guiding and asking what has to be written inside it. I mean, there was a very systematic way. There's an RCMP press conference, then there is an open hearing that takes place, and moments after Justin Trudeau has to resign under pressure, perhaps due to Trump tariffs or pressure from his own party, now comes this report, which is absolutely bizarre. The Indian government has hit out at it and accused Canada of interfering in the internal affairs of India, and perhaps post-August that could change.
Absolutely. In fact, Ambassador Fabian just joins us now. Ambassador Fabian, you know, what do you make of this report and India's response? We've issued a very strong statement rejecting the insinuations and in fact saying that Canada is interfering with India's internal politics. What's your take on this report, and will it make matters worse between India and Canada?
Well, let me put it this way. Matters between India and Canada are already at a low point.
Right.
And Justin Trudeau on his way out. So I don't think we should expect any improvement so long as he is still there. And we might see some change after the election, which Justin Trudeau is very likely to lose. But I want to make one point. If the Conservative Party doesn't get a proper majority, and if it needs support from the NDP, New Democratic Party, that is the Sikhs, they are there, well, in that case, we might come across the same problem again, because the Canadian Sikhs in Canada are well organized politically, and they are a political force to
Absolutely.
to reckon with.
And Ambassador Fabian, you've put that really well. The fact that the Sikh voters are so well organized, especially the extremists in Canada. And this is something, Abhijit, that you've raised, you've flagged consistently in the past, that don't think that the next government that comes to Canada is going to be any different from Trudeau. Tell us how it's going to play out in the next couple of months. Given Pierre Poilievre appears to be the favorite to replace Justin Trudeau, but even he might have to pander to these extremists.
It's actually worse than pander, Sandeep. The problem here is, you see, this entire politics was started by Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre. And in many ways, Justin has understood how to control the Khalistanis almost. You look at the primaries in Brampton and Surrey, where, Hardeep Sajjan and people like that literally had moderate Sikh candidates roughed up, kicked out, and the RCMP were waiting outside. They wouldn't interfere in those primaries, claiming that, this is cultural relativism, this is what the community does, etc., etc.
Right.
This is number one. Number two, because they understand the way criminality works and the financial controls very well. In fact, it is Hardeep Sajjan and people like that who are indebted to Justin Trudeau and not the other way around. Had Justin Trudeau interfered in the primary process, there's no way Hardeep Sajjan and people like that could have possibly won, I suspect. So it's more that Khalistanis depend on Justin Trudeau.
Right.
The problem with Pierre Poilievre is something totally different. He is highly dependent on a whole bunch of Khalistanis.
Right.
Forced. Tim Uppal is probably the least intelligent of the lot. He's never going to be anything other than a multicultural affairs minister. But there are three much more dangerous people. One is a Hindu MP called Arpan Khanna,
Yes.
who pivot on a dime. There is Param Gill, who's probably going to be the next home minister of that country. And finally, the most dangerous of the lot is a chap called Jasraj Hallan, who's almost certainly going to become the next finance minister of Canada. Now,
Right.
Jasraj Hallan is very good at covering up, because, a lot of the Khalistan, let's face it, there is no such thing as a Khalistan movement. It's an organized crime gang of drugs, their transport network, and the music network
Yes.
that goes normalizing drugs. But Jasraj knows how to manipulate this. He is closely involved with the illegalities of that particular lobby. He's a beneficiary of the illegalities of that lobby. Tim Uppal and Jasraj Hallan are. Param Gill and Arpan Khanna's proximity to that illegal network is a lot less well understood or explained. Now, they control Pierre Poilievre. So you have to expect that if the government changes, the relation is going to go further down. I don't see it recovering anytime in the near future.
You don't see it recovering anytime in the near future. That's a dark assessment. But Aditya, has Trump's arrival not changed things? The fact that Canada could well be the 51st state, as Trump keeps saying. It started as a joke, but now it seems that he's very serious about it.
Well, Trump is serious. You might always find him amusing or entertaining.
Yes.
That's separate.
Right.
But, he means business and he's a deal maker.
Right.
If he is not liking somebody, he'll make it public. Look at the example of Colombia.
Yes.
Which did not agree to accept the illegal immigrants.
Right.
And he raised the tariffs to 25% and said that
Right.
these tariffs will increase to 50% next week.
Yes.
And Colombia succumbed.
Right.
And has accepted the illegal immigrants now. India, there are reports now doing rounds that there are around close to 18,000 immigrants. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said that number is still being verified, and
Right.
India is readily accepted. Although
Yes.
18,000 is a very small number,
Right.
and India would be readily able to accept that. That wouldn't really be a huge
Not a
challenge.
problem, yes.
But The problem here is that Canada is, walking in a very troublesome space.
Right.
Trump is waiting to see what's going to happen in the next few weeks and then raise the bar really with Canada is concerned. He has already threatened them.
Right.
And, with the steps that he has taken, Trump has taken over the last 7 to 8 days, it's abundantly clear that he will continue to call Justin Trudeau Governor Trudeau and at the same time raise costs for Canada if they do not agree to the demands of Justin Trudeau administration.
Very interesting. Abhijit, what do you see what lies in store for Governor Trudeau in the next couple of days, as Aditya was saying? How bad is it going to be really for Canada under Trump?
Look, no matter how bad it is for Canada under Trump, it doesn't solve our problems with the Canadians. We have to get that out of the way.
Yes.
Because Trump is doing what he does for Canada. Now, Canada is going to have to cave in to a lot of things. The problem is that once the tariffs are imposed, Canada loses, or Canada agrees to make concessions like Colombia did.
Yes.
There is a significant drop in Canadian revenue, right? And Pierre Poilievre now has only one option, which is to go in for massive drilling. They literally stopped drilling over the last 8 years, drilling for oil, drilling for minerals, drilling for everything. They have to then go back to oil. The problem then is it takes at least 2 to 3 years for the drilling to start again. And for the uptick to start again, by which time Pierre Poilievre may very well become quite unpopular. The second problem with all of that is the short-term loss of revenue, which is not compensated by immediate income from drilling. Will always, remember that Canadian people are doing very, very badly at the moment. There is massive inflation. House prices, rents are insane. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to see a lot more crime. Now, the problem with a lot more crime is the biggest crime organization out there are the Khalistanis. That means more money in their pocket, which actually means they end up getting stronger. So, like I said, I'm not seeing any good outcomes for us vis-a-vis Canada on this.
Right, a vicious cycle there indeed, Abhijit, and thanks for outlining that for us. And Aditya, thank you for joining us on the News9 Plus Show. New report, no foreign interference in Canada's elections, but gangsters are killing terrorists, and we believe the Indian government is doing this. This is what the report seems to suggest. Thank you very much for joining us, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Ambassador KP Fabian. In Canada today, a 24-year-old Canadian, Tanner Fox, was given a 20-year jail sentence for killing Ripudaman Singh Malik. Now, Fox has ties with criminal gangs in Canada, and he is not a person of Indian origin. But who was Ripudaman Singh Malik, the alleged businessman who was shot dead in 2022? It turns out that Ripudaman Singh Malik was prosecuted for having contributed to financing the bombing of Air India Flight 182 in 1985. Now, News9 Plus did a report on the tragic bombing of this Air India aircraft. It's the worst attack on a passenger airliner in history before 9/11. 329 passengers were killed, most of them of Indian origin. Catch our special feature, Bombing Air India 182, available exclusively on the News9 Plus app. And thank you for watching the News9 Plus Show.
Hi Shannon, Air India 182, good morning.
Air India 182, good morning. Squawk to 2005, cleared for London. Air India 182, Shannon. Air India 182, Shannon. Air India 182, Shannon.